Hello and welcome to Sprite Guard Plays Noctis. This is a game that has been a favorite for a very long time, and it's kind of been a game that is pretty hard to get running. It's a very old game. You've probably already noticed it's very low resolution. It was all hand-coded in assembly, and I am now running it in DOSBox. And so I recommend actually watching this video in the smallest size that YouTube offers, because it actually looks a lot better if it's not too big on your screen. So we are on a Felician Star Drifter. That's the ship that we're on. And we are currently in orbit around a fueling station, so we are full up because you can't actually refuel while you are offline. So this is how we control the game, and this is kind of one of the most annoying user interfaces I have ever seen. So I will be trying to work through it as simply as possible. So we use this menu here. We can actually use the keyboard to simplify things, and so I am going to be doing that a little bit, though I don't like the thunking noises that I tend to get when I use the keyboard. I don't have a great sound setup just yet, but we can hit set remote and we can look around. Some of the stars are named. There's actually a pretty substantial community. I don't know how active they are now, but people will submit names for these stars, and it's all a shared universe. But it's so big that a huge number of stars are unknown, unnamed. And so we can look around and see if there's some place that we want to visit, see if there's anything that we want to see. So let's head to Montegma. So I double right click to select it, and then I press 7 to activate the faster than light drive. And we are on our way. And it's going to take a little while for us to get to, so I can talk a little bit about the options that we have. We have onboard devices that will let us use navigation instruments, and we can turn the light on and off. There's actually quite a lot of options behind this incredibly awkward menu, but we're actually here. We have arrived, and so I'm going to go back to the flight control drive, and we are going to set our local target, and now we can look around and see how many planets there are. And it's a little bit tricky to actually find them sometimes, but it will try to snap to them if they're in our view. And I think that we want to probably look for the ones that are named. And so Konfamyev. Let's see if that is an interesting one. So this one is small, solid, thin atmosphere. So that's going to be kind of a Mars-like one, which I actually find are often the most interesting, kind of have the best vistas. So we are going to start our fine approach, and that can actually take quite a long time. I ran into some bugs, especially when you're covering a very short distance. That can take quite a long time because you don't actually accelerate to any kind of speed before you start braking. But this is actually an updated version called Niv Plus. So I don't actually know yet how well this one works. So we have actually arrived. We can take a look from the roof to look at the planet. And you can see it has a kind of Mars-like appearance to it. The planets in this game are all kind of modeled on different basic forms. So there's ones that are like Earth, ones that are like Mars, ones that are based on Io that you can't actually land on. Though I think in some of the updated versions you might actually be able to land on them. So that's something we will have to check out. And then there are ones more like the Moon, and there are ones that are more like Jupiter that you cannot land on. So there's a few different kind of basic types of planets. And then unique to this game are these solid quartz planets. and we may end up visiting one, but they are pretty difficult to explore. So I'm going to deploy a surface capsule. We can move our crosshairs around the surface. I'm going to look for some place on the daytime side if I can, because daylight tends to be more interesting. So yeah, this seems like a good place. Let's check it out. We press enter, and we descend to the surface. And it looks like, despite trying to pick a place on the daylight side, it is quite dark. And sometimes that's just because the local star is very dim. There you can see it looks like it's actually one of the maybe the blue dwarf stars, or just a very distant blue giant, and so it's not casting a lot of light, and we will bounce when we hit the ground. One of the many frustrating things about this game is how long it takes to land, because you fall down and you bounce, and then you bounce again, and I don't know if it's loading during this time, or if that's just something that they decided would be fun. So now we're out here, and we can explore around and just wander around on the mountains, look around. It looks like we've actually come down in kind of the edge of a mountain onto this fairly flat area that we can explore. And I love the way that this star here is kind of casting its light. So there's our ship, and it puts a beam up into the air so that you can find your way back without too much trouble. And it looks like we landed pretty far up the mountain, so I'm actually going to try and climb up it. Everything is controlled with the mouse except for the menus have keyboard shortcuts. So I'm actually moving by moving the mouse forward, and that moves my character. And moving the mouse left and right turns you left and right. And then to look up and down, you actually have to right-click, and that will actually also let you strafe. So the controls are pretty strange and take a bit of getting used to. Also, the looking up and down is inverted by default, and I do not know of any way of changing that, which I'm not used to that. I do not usually play on inverted controls. So that's something that I still struggle with even after playing this game. Not really regularly. I've definitely been playing it off and on, but it is a game that I have known about for many years and have really liked. So that's basically it. There's no combat, there's no anything that we run into. We can refuel, like we started the game actually at a refueling station, but you use so little fuel that you do not have to refuel very often. And a lot of the time what I'll do is I'll just go to a fueling station when I'm ready to quit, because that way you will come back with full fuel. But then you find planets, you land on them, and then you wander around their surface and just see what you can find. And there are some interesting landforms that you can find. There's kind of this sense of sort of what I call fishing, where I find it often very enjoyable to just go through a large collection of things when most of those things are not very interesting, but a few of them are, or when they're not very interesting or not very useful, or I just don't like them, but a few of them are. And that was a lot of the appeal of playing Magic the Gathering when I played that, was going through these cards and most of them not being very useful and a few of them being very useful. And I used to play that a lot when I was quite a lot younger. But I found a lot of other games that have that kind of feel to them. And it's a feel that I still really enjoy. And I really like this game in particular because it has that sense of being just exactly what it is, that it's so much a game that's only for one purpose, just kind of relaxing and exploring planets and seeing these landscapes that in some ways are very ugly. In some ways I kind of see an odd sort of beauty in them, because I think that there's so little going on, but there's something a little bit appealing. I don't really see any great vistas here. I haven't really run into anything I really like here, and I want to move on to another planet. But every once in a while, you'll come on this vista that's just really well lit, and the lighting engine in this game can be very satisfying sometimes. And it's just, there's so little here, but what is here I find just works, and I don't even know that I can explain it any better than that. So as soon as you go into your pod, it takes off, and it can take you back to your spaceship. Everything in the game is procedurally generated, and based on my exploration, there's not a lot of templates. Like, I keep running into the same places over and over again, but there's just enough of a random factor that it works. It manages to have a few unusual things every once in a while. So I'm going to set my local target again and see if I can find a different... What's this nameless planet here? Let's see. Small, solid, dusty, craterized. That can actually be pretty interesting, and so I want to head over to it. I find that the sort of the moon-like planets can have some pretty stunning vistas. It's a lot of... Most of the landscape in this game is desert landscape. There are forest planets, but it's deserts and forests are most of what you're going to see. And so I know that there's a lot of kind of division around desert landscapes, that there are some people who really like them, and there are some people who really dislike them. And I have kind of grown to like them, especially as my father has kind of introduced me. Oh my goodness, we have a ring around a planet that is just glowing. This is the kind of thing that I'm talking about, that like you can get these very simple views that have this really striking appearance. And it's just got this charm to it that I really enjoy. So we are going to head down to the planet. Going to hit 9, and that will give us a view of the surface. And it looks like we are on a lit portion of it, so let's head down. I don't know how much value there is to scrolling around. I find it very difficult to read the map. I usually can't make much sense out of the map. And I find that when I think I know what's on the map and then I actually go down to the surface, it's very often not what I thought it was. So I have kind of taken to not paying a lot of attention to what the map says and just landing wherever. Try to land on the daylight side because this game can get very dark. But that's kind of the limit of what I'm able to read from the map. So it looks like we're landing in a bit of a plains, but this will be a good opportunity to kind of show off some of the walking, because you can actually walk very far in this game. And so once we have landed, I think we'll probably walk over to those mountains over there. Those look promising. So those are to the east. And what else do we have? Looks like we've got a good amount of mountains all around us. So once we've landed, we'll get out and we'll walk around a little bit. And there we go. Now we're out, and we can get up onto a rise to get a little bit of a better view. And I believe things in the distance generally tend to be brighter than things in the foreground. So those mountains are actually quite far away, but let's see if we can get to them. There is a limit in vanilla Noctis to how far you can walk. I know that Noctis CE, or Nice as it is sometimes called, will let you actually walk past a boundary, but it regenerates the area when you do that, and so you will feel like you're walking toward a mountain, and then you will actually get to the edge of the area, and you'll end up someplace completely different because it just generates a new area when you get to the edge. But you can still go back to the area you were in before. You just, sometimes there will be a mountain in the distance that you can't walk to, and in vanilla Noctis, you just run into a wall when that happens, and I don't actually know what happens when you go too far in this version. Oh my goodness. That is quite a view. Looks like we have found one of the craters that is kind of the hallmark. And it seems like we're bouncing a bit and sliding. I'm not in very much control right now. There we go. So we can go down into this crater, look around, and yeah, I can't even explain it, but there is a beauty that I see in this game. And I love that there is a game that's just about going around and looking at things. And I really wish there were more games like this. There have been a few games that kind of go in similar directions. There's Proteus, which is just a single island that you walk around, and is really charming. I should actually probably do a video on that. It's a really enjoyable kind of walking simulator game where you just see this really magical island. But it doesn't have kind of the... I don't want to say variety, because this game doesn't actually have anywhere near as much variety as Proteus does. But it doesn't have that sense of being in space. And then there was a game called Rodina that actually looked like it was very much trying to do similar things to Noctis, but it also was a combat game. It was a dogfighting game. And so you would land on a planet, and then the aliens on the planet would come and shoot you. And so I found I couldn't really walk around and just enjoy the landscape in the way that I can in Noctis. Even though it had a much better graphics, I ended up not liking it as much because of that. And I know that a lot of people find combat necessary, or just find that not having anything to do is always less interesting than having combat. And I respect that. I know that, everybody kind of has their own way that they approach games and their own ideas of what it is that they need to be engaged with a game. And there are many I that I don't find engaging and that I find kind of pointless and dull. And I have kind of a limit to how much I can play Noctis. There's definitely this sense of I play it for a while, and then I get worn out by the amount of repetition, and I take a break, and then I start thinking about it again, and then I come back to it. And so it's not a game like Hyper Rogue where I can just constantly be playing it, or a game like Lemma where there's constantly new stuff coming at you. It's very, very different kind of game. It's very much a unique game. And maybe that's just the way that things are best off, is if this is itself. I would really like to see a modern game in this mold. I would really like to have a pure exploration game with this kind of scale. And maybe it exists. I've seen, certainly, there's games like Celestia and Space Engine that seem to be working on similar ideas. But maybe this is enough. I don't know. Let's try heading to another star. And we can actually head to maybe a different kind of star. I'd actually like to look for a star class 0. I think we're at a blue star here. I don't remember now. Oh, I saw a 0. Is that a 0 or an 8? Yes, that's a 0. So that is a medium-sized yellow star, and those are the most likely to have planets, and they're the most likely to have planets with life on them. So we should be able to find some interesting stuff. Let's start our Vimana flight. And let's see, we've got to go 25 light years, which should go by pretty quickly because we have a very powerful light drive. And I think one of the things that I really love about this game is just how straightforward it is. Just, you have a ship, you fly to planets, there's nothing complicating it. So let us find our local target. Set local target, planet 2. You can also type in planet numbers. There's planet 1, planet 2. Looks like there are only 2 planets here. So let's head to planet 1 and see what kind of a planet it is. Ah, here's one of the solid quartz planets that I mentioned. So let's head over there. Start fine approach. And it's 2.34 diams away, which is not very far, which should be far enough for us to build up some speed and then slow back down. I had one that was just like a fraction of a diam away, and so it just incredibly slowly approached the target. So here we are, and we're actually very close to the star. And so I'm not actually really optimistic about what we're going to see when we land here, because quartz planets are strange and difficult to navigate. And I think the best way to really share that is to just land on it. So let us find a place to land. Daytime side or nighttime side? I'm not even sure which is better in this case. Let's try the nighttime side first, and then if it's really not that good, it's very dark, that actually might be a good thing. Because the deal with the quartz planets is that the ground is transparent, and so it's very difficult to navigate, especially in the daytime areas where the ground can just be glowing so brightly. Here it seems like it's actually maybe too dark to actually find our way around and see things. Looks like we have a little bit of light right on the horizon that's going to show us a little bit of what's around us, but I just don't think there's enough light. It does have a very nice glow to it, though. And I do want to look around a little bit, maybe get up on one of these mountains, because there is just such a lovely glow here, and I don't know how well that will actually come across on YouTube. I know that YouTube can tend to make things very dark. So probably once we get up onto this ridge, I will head back to the ship and we will land on the daytime side. And we can see, oh my goodness, I did not expect to have a view that nice. I hope that that comes across well in the recording, because I really like the look of that. And you may be looking at it and saying, I don't know if the compression made this ugly or if it really is that ugly. And from kind of a more universal standpoint, I think it is pretty ugly. I think that from the point of view of asking, what would another person looking at this say? What would a random person off the street say about this? Would they say that this is a really gorgeous vista? Probably not. They'd probably say it's blocky and it's ugly, and I understand. Because this is a very old game and it has a very unusual aesthetic. and that's something that I'm actually pretty accustomed to. I am a really big fan of a lot of music in particular that people find very difficult to listen to. And not too long ago, I actually supported another YouTuber, gave him some money as part of a crowdfunding campaign to make a series of videos out of the music of this composer who wrote player piano music that was so complicated that it sometimes would just sound like somebody hammering randomly on the keys. But this guy makes these videos that show each note when it's playing and kind of makes a graph out of it. And so you can see the different parts of the piece in this very organized, structural way. And I found it really fascinating to see this music that I'd always really enjoyed, but that is very difficult to listen to. And to see it drawn out like that was really amazing. So I'm going to pick a random spot to land, and we will head back down to the surface and see what the daylight side of this world is like. Some of the quartz worlds I found are actually fairly navigable, and some of them have this transparent ground that's just impossible to find your way around on. So let's see what we have here. It looks like we have a fairly interesting formation over here, kind of northeast of us. So we will have to take a look at that. Oh my goodness. It looks like we've landed on a really interesting place. So these solid quartz planets are really, I think a lot of this game actually is really this hit or miss thing of, like, sometimes it's just nothing, sometimes it's impossible to find your way around, and then sometimes it's just this really incredible experience. This is one of my favorite things I've seen in this game in quite a long time, and I want to find a really good angle to view it from. I really love the kind of the really abrupt cliffs that you can get in this game sometimes. And this is just a lovely little valley that we've found here. So you can actually take pictures in this game. And so I want to kind of find a nice vista point, maybe climb up one of those mountains behind us. That is so lovely. That's so nice. Let me see, I want to get a little bit higher up. Whoop. You can fall off cliffs, you don't get hurt, but it can be fairly frustrating to do so. I just want to get a shot kind of along the cliffside like that. Yeah, and then you press star on the number pad, and that takes a picture, and it just saves it as an image file. So let's see. I am starting to get some frame rate issues. I have noticed that this game kind of loses frame rate as it runs, and so I'm going to have to wrap it up here, and it looks like we've actually been going for quite a while. So I hope you enjoyed this. This is a game that I see a lot of beauty in, but I also really kind of see how that beauty is difficult to see. And I think that that's something that is a really common theme in my life. And it's something that I like to think about a lot, is the really subjective way that we see things, and the way that I'm very much drawn to things that are in some way misshapen, or in some way that even I recognize as kind of being not great, but that whatever that weakness is, I find that weakness draws me as its own kind of beauty. And so I think that part of this game, as much as I love the lighting engine and the kind of the shapes that this game can make, I think a part of it is just appreciating the ugliness as its own kind of beauty, and I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but I really enjoy this game. This is Noctis. It is a free game. I will have a link in the description. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.